We are live. You're watching the Merged Marketing Podcast. You are listening to the Merged Marketing Podcast, and this is episode 137. And in this episode today, we're talking about the 4 magic words that transform sales and marketing. And right there with me today is Merit Kahn. Merit, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Jay. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. I think a good place to start will be understanding who's Merit Kahn and what's her journey that got her to the place where we're at today.
Appreciate that. So I am currently the CEO of Select Sales Development. We spell it SELLected. We want you to stop selling, though. We want you to start getting selected. See what we did there? And I've been in sales management, coaching, training, consulting for the last 20 plus years. Got my start selling radio advertising, did really well, became the youngest general sales manager in the Chicago radio market way before I was ready, if I'm really honest. But it was in that role that I hired a company to do some professional training for the sales team that I was hiring and developing. And when the radio station was being sold, I looked around and thought, I do not want to be in this business anymore. I want to be in the coaching, training, consulting business. So I jumped ship and never looked back. It's been great.
You know, a lot of people may challenge you on that point, Merritt, that radio is still alive and doing well. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I still have a lot of friends in the radio business. I wish them well. I just don't want to do that anymore.
So who does Selected Sales Development help? And that's selected with SELL.
Select.
Yes.
Yes.
Who does it help?
Primarily, we work with anybody that sells something custom or creative. It requires a consultative sales process as opposed to a click here, buy now. Those would be that's our market. So where we really pick up is where a good marketing campaign might leave off. So you've got somebody that are interested. I think, I'm often asked, what's the difference between sales and marketing? And so marketing is everything you do to get to a conversation. Once you're in a conversation, that's when sales begins. And so when you understand and you put effort into understanding the sales process and the sales language, you can infuse those things into your marketing messages so that they're more effective. But where we really help our entrepreneurs, business owners, sales teams that we work with, professionals who are very good at what they do, but frustrated because it should be easier to get business than it is, that's our market. A lot of professional services, I would say, is a really good sweet spot for us, as well as, I don't know why, but engineering. I seem to work with a lot of engineering companies. So I can teach engineers how to have sales conversations. That's pretty crazy.
It's I love the way you put that, because it would simply put, marketing is getting you into the conversation and sales is everything that happens after that point of contact.
Right.
I think that's very important for a lot of people that kind of misconstrued or make it a very complicated definition defining the two. My question is, in terms of working with all these professional services, such as engineers, there must be some challenges that they're facing. And there's a certain pain point that you're addressing with Select. Tell me about those challenges.
Well, generally I hear things like, the sales process is dragging on and on. So they really want to, when I ask a question like, you could sell more if only, like, how do you finish that sentence? And so I would say things that I hear often are, if I could shorten the sales cycle, I could be out there doing more business. If I felt more in control of getting referrals and introductions to grow my business, I could sell more. If I could upsell or cross-sell our opportunities, we could grow our business. I think for a lot of professionals, they get their brains picked a lot. So people want to know what they know, but then they don't want to pay for that expertise. So a lot of times I'm asked questions and we work with our clients about how to use their expertise to ask great questions that help prospects understand that they have more pain than they thought they did and really could use their help, as opposed to how many people are wired, which is, I just want to, like, what can I do to help? I'm just here to help. I'm here to serve. And then you end up getting your brain picked away until there's nothing left for you. And that's not a good recipe for running a business.
I'm sure it's also a fresh approach too, right? When somebody's in the weeds of the business on a consistent basis, it's tough to get out of the weeds and have that sort of like fly in the wall look at the business and the processes. And I'm sure that's where you bring the most value to the table. And
Yeah.
with that being said, Merritt, is there a couple great examples that come to mind of where you went into a business and really rejuvenated their sales processes?
Yeah, I'll give you an example that just happened last week. I was working with a brand new client, and they've been very lucky. Their words, not mine, but truth. They've been able to grow in their space just because they had good SEO, they had some good referral sources early on, and they've built a very good reputation. So they have a lot of credibility in their space. They're a translation company. But as they were looking at their numbers, the reason they reached out to me was because they were growing by accident as opposed to by deliberate design. And so they really wanted some power and control over their own future growth. And so I went in, and I mean, we had been working together for a little while virtually, and then I was in their office last week, and so we were able to put some structures in place for them to really identify their ideal target audience, the pains that those people have, the decision makers in that world. Um, we identified different groups where they could very specifically ask for and get referrals from a specific universe of people, and like a niche category. We talked about how they were going to write articles and give value, and how they could use that in email marketing campaigns and things like that. So we were able to, again, like you were saying, work on the business instead of in the business. And we took a much higher perspective view. And the reason I was able to take them very quickly through things that they had struggled to do for many, many years was because I know the 10 things you need to do to launch sales. In fact, we baked it into a program that we just started delivering, just started offering for our clients, which is what we call our digital jumpstart. So it's like, don't get creative. These are the 10 things you need to spend some time on if you want to just jumpstart sales, right? Like maybe you've been in business a long time and it's time to just kind of refresh. You found yourself in the situation I just described where you grew and it was great, but it's not deliberate. And so you're at the mercy of what the marketplace lands in your lap, as opposed to really in control of your own future and your destiny.
We see this firsthand in our business. Being a digital marketing agency, we specialize in SEO, Google ads, and social media paid ads. So when you're focused and fixated on those areas, we're leading the horse to water essentially. We're
Yes.
getting the leads on demand. But where the hiccup or the bottleneck happens is really on the point of the business in terms of closing those leads. So obviously we'll try to facilitate it as best we can. But again, I think there's a missing piece there, Merritt, that I think you might have the answer for, right?
Well, yeah, because and then, you might have done a great marketing campaign. You're delivering a ton of leads for them. And if they're not converting those leads, not only do they want to make it your problem, which it is not, but they also then, it's expensive. It's expensive to pay for leads that you don't know how to convert. And so your business is in jeopardy. And at the end of the day, uh, learning how to have a good, authentic business conversation, which, by the way, is the new ABCs of selling. It used to be always be closing, which is a terrible thing. Nobody likes that. That's pushy and aggressive. That's old school. The new ABCs of selling are authentic business conversations. So if you have a lead that comes in like a gift from heaven, your marketing has worked, you better be able to know how to you know, set an expectation, have a good conversation, start from a general perspective of, what their issue is, and get down to personal brass tacks so that they really discover for themselves how painful it is and how much they need to solve this problem. And maybe you help them multiply the amount of money or lost opportunity that it's cost by having this problem in place longer than just what's right in front of them. And that's what a professional salesperson is able to do is, it's not about asking questions so that you can sell them. It's about asking questions so they have discoveries on their own so they can select you. That's the bottom line.
Don't be the hero, be the guide in their journey, right? Got
Yeah,
to quote Donald Miller from Storybrand on that one.
absolutely.
But it's and I'm seeing this again firsthand, Merit, because in our business, I'm the brand ambassador. I'm the face of it. I have an entire team behind me, but I'm the one that's fielding those sales calls. And I've heard it firsthand from the leads that are coming in through our funnels. It's refreshing to have an owner in the business or that face of the business or somebody that is actually local, having that conversation with them. And I think a lot of businesses are doing it wrong by outsourcing some of that work or that sales or those closes, because I think people are getting rubbed the wrong way by a salesperson with a sales script that's not being that ABC authentic or creating that authentic business conversation.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I think, there's a lot of things you can outsource in your business to ease time and pressure, and honestly, you always should hire somebody to do the things that you are not in your genius zone, because it is somebody else's genius zone. But to first of all, I have a little soapbox about this for owners and entrepreneurs. Um, if you don't understand the sales process and you're not well schooled in how to take a prospective client through a sales conversation, trying to outsource that is going to be incredibly difficult for you. Number one, I mean, I'm not saying you have to be the one to always do it. It doesn't have to be an owner's role to sell. That's not my point. But the owner has to understand what's happening. The owner has to understand what our sales process is. And if you can't articulate it as an owner, you don't have a sales process in your company. So that's rule number one. The owner always has to play. You can outsource it after you understand it, but until you understand it, if you outsource it, a sales professional is going to run circles around you. You're going to be at their mercy. And you really do need to understand this is how we cultivate our leads through the closed deal and through a repeat customer and a referral resource. And so all that whole process, at least an owner has to have some eyeballs on it, has to understand it.
I love that. We're leaving a bit of a cliffhanger here right now, because the topic of this episode, or the title of this episode, is the 4 magic words that transform sales and marketing. Well, I think now's about the time, Merit. You got to drop the 4 words. What are those 4
I got to
words?
drop those words. Well, if you're open to it, let me give you just a little quick story or analogy first. Go ahead and make a fist with one of your hands. Just, you can go ahead and make a fist. Great. This represents your prospect's mind, closed. Okay. Closed for business. Now, why are they closed? They're overwhelmed, they're overworked, they're just plain over it. They've heard it all before. Maybe they walked in or they went to your website. They know exactly what they were looking for. They're not open to anything else, right? So, and then if you were to wave a $20 bill or a credit card or a Vegas chip in your other hand and try to get it into your fist, closed fist, can't do it, right? If you're driving,
Can't
don't
do
play
it.
along.
Yeah.
You can't do it. And that's what we're trying to do all day long. We're trying to jam our value into somebody else's closed mind. But we have virtual classes and we'll write your copy for you, and and we'll, I'll come on site and da da da. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, all of our value doesn't land if their mind is closed. So the very first thing that we have to do is open their mind to receive our value. So the first step to a closed deal is always an open mind. When you open your fist, and in our example, you can lay the dollar bill right on top. But until that happens, all of your value falls flat. So there were 4 magic words I used already, not only in the example, but in preparing you for the example. And those are you open to? And it's a game changer, because very interested for a prospect to not be interested in what you have to offer. But it's very hard for them to admit publicly that they are not open to hearing about it. And the reason for that, and think about it, like, if I were to ask you, are you an open-minded person, Jay? What's your answer?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Phew. I was hoping that didn't backfire on me. Would you say that you're more open-minded than the average?
I'm very open-minded, so I would say yes, I'm
All
more
right.
open-minded than the average.
Very good. Do you know people who are not open-minded?
100%.
Okay.
Yes, very much
So
so.
The way that you just answered all three of those questions is 100% the way that every audience that I've ever done a keynote at a large conference, like there could be 1,000 people in the room. I ask that question, all the hands go up in the appropriate places, or it could be a small retreat setting where I'm just training 20 people and everybody answers those questions the same. In fact, there was a study that was done out of Pepperdine University when they asked people, would you consider yourself more open-minded than the average? And 95% of respondents said yes, which I don't know where you went to school, Jay, but not when I studied old math, maybe it's different in new math. 95% of us cannot be better than the average. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, I think you're probably, I mean, because you think about open-mindedness and somebody not being open-minded, it's a negative quality or a negative trait.
Exactly.
And you're always going to compare yourself in kind of probably an optimistic type of light and be like, hey, I know somebody, I may be bad, but I know there's somebody that's worse.
Exactly. So that's what makes those 4 words so magical and simple, because when you ask somebody, are you open to, they're going to respond from ego and identity, like the identity that, maybe not ego, but the identity that they see of themselves. And so they have to filter their answer through that desired identity. And that's why it's easy for people to be uninterested in your offers, because they can still be a nice person. But to say they're not open to it, it says something about who they are. And we don't want to be not open.
I just actually, I got a bunch of quotes on the other side of my computer that I look at all day long, tons of different quotes. And I just added the "Are you open to?" So I never forget it. I love it.
Well, I actually just now, just this a couple days ago, added a storefront to my website, so you can go and order whatever "Are you open to" swag you would like.
Oh,
It's
no
already
way.
built for you. Yeah,
Brilliant.
mugs,
Brilliant.
and I've got a pillow in my background for you can kind of see it, but I have my "Are you open to" pillow. But on the Zoom meetings that I'm doing all day long every day, I love it in my background because it reminds me to be open to what other people are saying to me. And it reminds them, and it piques their interest to ask me, like, well, what does that mean? And to be open to what I have to say. So I'm a big proponent of having messages like that, not just in your view where you can see them, but also think about staging the message that you want others to see when they're interacting with you.
I think you need to make a conscious effort as a part of your content strategy to make sure Merit Kahn is ranking #1 for a Google search for "Are you open to?"
We're gonna. Well, thank you for saying that. You are the expert in that. I do own the domain, but there's nothing
Nice.
happening on it yet. But there will be.
Awesome. Awesome. Cool. Circling back here, Merit, I want to get your definition of emotional intelligence, because it's something I think that a lot of people are unsure of the exact definition of it, because there's a lot of different definitions out there of what it is.
Yeah. So emotional intelligence, I got certified in that back in, I don't know, 2008, something like that. And at the time, I was always defining it, because when I would talk to a group of business leaders and ask them, are you familiar with emotional intelligence? Very few hands went up at that point. Now people have heard about it, but there is this misunderstanding of the meaning. So I like to simplify things. There's uh, there's really 3 parts of what I would consider a strong, successful, supportive mindset. And the 3 parts are your internal mind. That's what you say to yourself. Then there's your behavioral mind. That's really what your actions say to other people. And then there's your emotional mind. And that's how well you understand your own emotional triggers and the impact you have on other people. So it's really about the impact you have on others. That's where that whole body of work with emotional intelligence is so incredibly important for business owners, entrepreneurs, and certainly for people in sales roles.
Is it possible to, is it something you have or you don't? Is it something you can practice and get better at? Are there tricks of the trade that people can practice on their own to be better at emotional intelligence?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, there's 15 separate attributes that make up emotional intelligence. And so most of us are going to have highs and lows among, scattered amongst the 15. Now, the assessment tool that I use is out of a company called Multi Health Systems, MHS. They're based out of Toronto, and they have the most scientifically validated assessment tool for emotional intelligence worldwide. And so being certified with them really has given me a great understanding of this whole field. And what I find fascinating about emotional intelligence, so to answer your first question, yes, you can grow your emotional intelligence. And that's one of the reasons why I like that assessment so much, as opposed to a behavioral based profile where you're kind of wired how you're kind of wired. It's important, it's relevant to understand that so that you can deliberately adjust if you'd like to. But that's going to be situational adjustments. With emotional intelligence, it tends to grow as we age and have more wisdom and more experiences, more observations about ourselves. But what I find fascinating is not the individual attributes in and of themselves, but the way that they play together in combinations. So I'll give you an example. And I know we're all over the pandemic, but it's a universal shared experience, and it does make for a good example. So let's say, remember, like early in 2020, when it was all new and everybody was like, oh my gosh, what is happening? You wanted to, salespeople, like, I got so many phone calls. What do I do now? I have no idea. Like, do I call my prospects and clients? Do I just lay low? Like, what is happening? And so there are two attributes that I specifically studied during that time: empathy and assertiveness. Now, let's say you had high empathy and low assertiveness on your emotional intelligence assessment. No matter what I would have trained you to say, what you would have said is, I'm just checking in. How are you? Is everything okay? Is there anything I can do? Let me know if you need anything, right? Now, if you're sitting there with a solution that could help them in that time of, what was going on in the world, and your assertiveness was low, you wouldn't have said anything. And you would have hung up the phone like, I'm such a good person. I did such a good thing. I checked in. Now, let's reverse it. Let's say you were high assertiveness and low empathy. Well, now you're making phone calls to your prospects, no matter what's going on in the world. And you're like, so, hey, have you checked out that proposal lately? And the person on the other end of the phone is like, do you not know there's a global pandemic? Like, what, are you under a rock somewhere? Like, what is happening? So that person's not getting any business either. The key to emotional intelligence is balance. When you can balance all the different 15 attributes, you can lean into the ones that are going to be helpful for you, and you're going to be less like triggered and more effective. So what that sounded like in real life, if empathy and assertiveness are balanced, is, hey, I was thinking about you. I certainly wanted to check in first and foremost. How is everybody in your world? Blah, 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 right? Listen, with all the things that we can't control in the world, there's one thing that is within our control. And I would be remiss if I, just checked in and I didn't offer an opportunity to make a decision and have a conversation about this one thing that could really be helpful for your business at this time. Are you open to having that conversation? And that is balanced between empathy and assertiveness. It uses the 4 magic words, and frankly, it's just a genius way to do it.
I love that. I love that, and in so many ways, and it's so relevant personally for me right now as I'm developing some sales scripts for our team, and it's like the "Are you open to" needs to be a part of that for sure.
Absolutely.
I
I
love
only charge you a quarter per time you use
There you
it.
go. Perfect. Smart. You're an affiliate marketer as well. That's it. So I got to ask this question here, and it's how does someone position themselves to be selected? Because one of the big things is is not selling, but be selected.
Yeah.
And what is that? Is there a secret sauce to that?
Well, I wrote about some myths that were popular in business in a book that I published back in 2016. And one of the myths that I talked about was the idea of act as if. Maybe you had heard that at some point in your career, like act as if you're the success you want to be, like people want confidence and all that. And I think that is just terrible advice. If you really want to be selected by your ideal prospects and clients, you want to use your expertise to ask as if you really want to understand what's going on for them. So the slight shift, the advice we were given, act as if, the slight shift to that is ask as if. So if you want to be selected more often, then you have to understand the questions that you can ask to help people discover for themselves that they need what you have, as opposed to trying to ask questions in order to sell them. You're coming from a position of seek to understand, and more like an old-fashioned journalist, not the necessarily journalists we have today, but the old school journalists that really did seek to find the truth. You remember those folks? So, in that world, it's ask as if. And I think that's probably one of the most important things we can do as professional, sales professionals and entrepreneurs and business owners. And that's really what we want to do anyway, is we want, we have this solution. It does help people, but it doesn't help everybody. It helps certain people or certain companies in certain kinds of situations and pain. And so I want to ask questions to figure out, are we a good match for each other? And I think that's also maybe a shift in mindset, is, instead of trying to think of my offers as good for everyone, I really want to understand if we're a good match for each other.
Authentic business conversations. Again,
Bingo.
there it is. Awesome. This has been great, Merit. I'm sure we can talk for a lot longer about this, but for the sake of time, I'm gonna tie this up here and give you the opportunity to let our audience know what's the best way for them to get in touch with you.
Best way is the meritkahn.com website. That's the hub of all things. So we'll put a link somewhere. But meritkahn.com. Throw a /podcast on the end of that, and there's a bunch of different resources. There's always a let's talk button, so don't be afraid. Hit it. Grab a few minutes on my calendar and let's see if we're a match.
And you can go and check those out in the show notes for today's episode, merged.ca/podcast/137. Now, Merit, we end every show with the same question. That question is this: if you can choose one person, dead or alive, to represent your brand, who would it be and why?
Wow. I'm going to go with my little grandma, which won't mean anything to anybody else but me, but she was she was adorable and influential. She moved mountains. She's this little 4'9", nothing little individual who left an amazing legacy. And I think my brand would be in very good hands with her.
Well, I'll tell you, Merit, nobody else in the 137 episodes has selected your grandmother. So
wow. They should. They're missing the boat. They don't know.
Awesome. Merit, this has been great. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jay.